He goes by the name Monkey, and yes, that's the character you get to control. A guy who willingly responds to the name Monkey. Now, before you laugh, there are a few things you should know. First, this guy would probably snap you in half, so I'm not sure he's someone to laugh at. Second, there's a reason he has such a stupid name, and in fact, that reason is one of the things that makes Enslaved, Odyssey to the West such a cool game. Now, if you're a student of classical Chinese literature, that subtitle might ring a bell. Journey to the West is a 16th century novel, one of 4 books considered China's greatest works of literature. Obviously, the story's been adapted countless times over the last 400 years, and in the West, it's perhaps best known as Monkey. It's not often you get to play a game based on one of the most influential stories ever written, but that's exactly what Enslaved is. This is an all-new adaptation of the classic Chinese novel, a novel in which one of the main characters is a staff-wielding monkey born from stone. He's also known as the Monkey King, hence the name of both the English version of Journey to the West and the beefy guy we get to destroy robots with in Enslaved. So now that Monkey's name has some context, let's take a look at what Monkey can do. Because for all the focus on story and presentation, Enslaved is a video game. And in that regard, it's based on slightly more contemporary pieces. Specifically, Prince of Persia and God of War, 2 games that are slightly newer than 400 years old. In fact, if you like any of those post-Tomb Raider displays of video game acrobatics, you'll love Enslaved. It's an action-adventure game very much along those high-flying lines, only it mixes in lots of solid beat-em-up combat as well. Monkey's climbing abilities do his name justice, and Enslaved exploits that for a satisfying gameplay pattern. Platform, trapeze act, blow up some mechs, and repeat. Of course, from that basic formula, Enslaved does add a few tricks of its own. The developers at Ninja Theory often referred to this as a puzzle game in disguise, which really isn't a bad description for the game's levels. The environments themselves are often huge puzzles, and dangerous encounters with robots can actually be avoided if you explore your surroundings for the best route. And for those reasons and more, Enslaved is actually a pretty smart game. It may look derivative, but this is a classic example of a game that's more than the sum of its parts. For example, you play under the enslavement of a mysterious young girl, so you might think, well, this is just another escort mission. But the game really approaches things from fresh angles. That pairing is the core around which the entire game is designed. Enslaved fully exploits this tag team idea, and because the story is done so well, their uncomfortable pairing creates an interesting dynamic. Monkey has to help Trip get home, but she didn't exactly ask, and he certainly doesn't want to. And perhaps even more than the gameplay, that's where Enslaved shines. The story and presentation are just fantastic. The adaptation was actually written by the novelist Alex Garland, the guy who wrote The Beach and the screenplay for 28 Days Later. But as good as the story is, I gotta tell you, the presentation might be even better. Enslaved is just a gorgeous game, with lots of vivid colors and rich details, and most of all, some dramatic set pieces. Like, very dramatic. If you've ever wondered what Uncharted would be like if it were set in a post-apocalyptic world with the Prince of Persia as its lead character, this is probably as close as you're gonna get to an answer. And it's also the kind of game that justifies the cinematic nature of modern video games. With great pacing, fantastic art, and solid gameplay, Enslaved, Odyssey to the West is an Odyssey worth taking.
Let's head for that building.